because he's a trafficker. And
Okay.
he's using music and entertainment traffic.
Now, is this just boys, girls, adults, kids? Like it?
I mean, from what I've heard from sources that I would consider reliable, it really doesn't matter.
Wow.
I don't think sexuality is something that has anything to do with gender at this point. I honestly think he's just an extreme narcissist who loves power. He loves the ability to manipulate and control people. Why? Most likely because he was victimized by his mentor, who loved to control people.
And his mentor was
Andre Harrell,
Tell us how
who
was
was
he
mentored by Clive Davis.
And don't tell me that Andre Harrell got touched by Clive Davis too.
I'm telling you, I don't know what happened between Andre and Clive. What I do know is that Andre got passed over. Like,
Wow.
how do you go from being the president of Uptown and losing your entire company to your intern?
But he got a boss too, and his boss name is Clive Davis. Clive run him. Diddy don't run himself.
Oh my gosh, buckle up because this tea is scalding hot. You know how they say the music industry has more secrets than a confessional booth? Well, this story about Clive Davis and Barry White is about to prove that saying 100% true. And trust me, it's juicier than anyone could have imagined. So everyone's always wondered why Clive Davis seemed to have this weird vendetta against Barry White, right? I mean, here's Barry with that iconic voice that basically invented bedroom R&B, making hit after hit, and Clive's acting like he's public enemy number one. Well, turns out there was way more to this story than just music industry drama. We're talking about some serious skeletons in Clive's closet that Barry apparently knew all about. Word on the street is that Barry had gotten his hands on some tapes, and not the musical kind. We're talking about recordings that had Clive Davis sweating bullets in his designer suits. The kind of tapes that could make even the most powerful music executive lose sleep at night. And Barry? Well, let's just say he wasn't the type to keep quiet when he saw something wrong. The really wild part? This wasn't just about business disagreements or creative differences. No, this was about something so explosive that Clive was willing to do whatever it took to keep Barry White as far away from the industry spotlight as possible. Because sometimes the smoothest voice in R&B knows things that could shake the entire music industry to its core. And let me tell you, when you hear what was actually on those tapes, well, let's just say it makes all those other music industry scandals look like child's play. This is the story Clive Davis never wanted you to hear. And now we finally know why. Let's talk about the dark side of the music industry in the 70s. Because this story about Barry White and Clive Davis, it's wild, y'all. Barry White, this absolute unit of talent, walked into the music scene like he owned it. And honestly, he kind of did. But here's where things get spicy. Unlike other artists who were desperate for fame, Barry wasn't about to play the industry's twisted games, especially not with Clive Davis, who was basically the final boss of the music world back then. Now let's get real for a second. There were some nasty rumors floating around about Clive Davis at the time. We're talking about casting couch vibes, but make it worse. Way worse. And Barry, he was out here trying to warn everybody about what was really going down behind those fancy office doors. But you know how it goes. Nobody wants to listen until it's too late. The really creepy part? Artists under Clive's label had this weird habit of, not staying alive. It was giving major suspicious vibes, kind of like what people are saying about Diddy nowadays. But Barry White, this man said, "Not today, Satan," and did something absolutely revolutionary for a black artist in those days. He started his own label.
Rumor has it, allegedly, Diddy got on his knees for Clive Davis in 1994, and that's how Bad Boy Records came about.
My man was out here collecting wins like Pokemon cards, writing hits, producing bangers, acting in movies, and basically showing everyone how it's done. 2 Grammy Awards later, Barry was living his best life, keeping his soul, and everything else intact. But just when everything was looking perfect, well, that's when things got really interesting. And by interesting, I mean terrifying. Because success in the music industry, sometimes it comes with a price tag that's way too high. Barry White's early life was marked by tragedy and hardship, long before his voice would become synonymous with soul music. Born in Texas in 1944, his family story was complicated from the start. His mother, Sadie Marie Carter, discovered that Barry's father, Melvin White, was already married, a revelation that would shape young Barry's identity. In a decisive moment that spoke to his character, Barry chose to embrace his father's surname, legally changing his name from Carter to White. The streets of South Central Los Angeles became Barry's classroom, but these weren't easy lessons. Together with his younger brother Daryl, Barry found himself caught in the cycle of street life and petty crime. The severity of their situation became clear when Daryl was incarcerated at just 8 years old, a stark illustration of the environment they were growing up in. The bond between the White brothers was unshakable, but their paths would diverge tragically. While Barry would eventually find his way to music, Daryl's life was cut short in what some say was gang violence, though others maintain it was over a trivial $20 dispute with a neighbor. In his autobiography, Love Unlimited: Insights on Life and Love, Barry wrote poignantly about their relationship. No one could understand the bond between me and my brother. I struggled to understand the forces that drove his soul in one direction and mine to another. Even after this devastating loss, Barry's path to redemption wasn't immediate. At 16, he was arrested for stealing Cadillac tires, resulting in a 4-month jail sentence. This brush with the law would prove to be a turning point, though the road ahead would be far from smooth. Music would eventually become his salvation, but not before he faced more challenges that would test his resolve. The turning point in Barry White's life came from an unexpected source: Elvis Presley's "It's Now or Never" playing through a jail radio. Sitting in his cell, serving time for stealing those Cadillac tires, Barry experienced what he would later describe as a profound awakening. The music spoke to him in a way that would alter the course of his life forever.
Greed is a funny thing. Once you take a bite of it, it tends to turn on you and start eating you up. The industry was making enough money. The industry was growing fast enough. The industry was progressing enough.
In later interviews, Barry would reflect on this period with remarkable candor. "When I turned 17, I looked around and saw nothing but depression," he recalled. "People just go around in circles." The streets that had once seemed like his only option now appeared as a dead end, and he knew he had to make a choice: change or spiral downward. His 18th birthday proved equally pivotal. Instead of attending his final year of high school, Barry made a decision that seemed strange at the time, but would prove prophetic. He walked to Capitol Records in Hollywood and simply stood there, staring at the building for hours. It was as if he was willing his future into existence. What makes Barry's musical journey particularly remarkable is that he never formally learned to read or write music. His early musical education came from his mother's classical records and a piano she had bought him. He would sit for hours, teaching himself to play by ear, replicating the complex classical pieces he heard at home. A persistent rumor from this period claimed that Barry was the uncredited pianist on Jesse Belvin's "Good Night, My Love," a story that gained traction because they lived in the same neighborhood. But perhaps the most significant development in Barry's teenage years was the emergence of his distinctive voice. As he would later explain, "As a child, I had a normal, squeaky voice. Then at 13, everything changed, giving him the deep, resonant tone that would become his trademark." The transformation of Barry White's voice became almost mythical in his household. When that deep bass emerged, it wasn't just a voice changing. It was a moment that moved his mother to tears, marking her son's transition into manhood. By 14, his voice had developed into something that startled even himself. "I woke up one morning, spoke to my mother, and scared both of us," he would later recall. A story that perfectly captured the dramatic nature of his vocal evolution after his brush with the law, including a near-miss charge that he was later cleared of. 1960 marked White's entry into the music industry proper. But unlike many artists who simply performed, Barry was crafting a much broader musical legacy. He cut his teeth working with small Los Angeles labels, releasing Too Far to Turn Around and collaborating with groups like the Atlantics and the Majestics. His musical DNA was shaped by giants like James Cleveland, Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, and Marvin Gaye. Though like Gaye, he too carried the weight of a complicated relationship with his father. By 1965, White was already showing his prowess as a producer, crafting hits like Feel All Right for the Bel Cantos on Downey Records, followed by Man Ain't Nothing and I Don't Need It the next year. His breakthrough moment came in 1967 when he discovered Felice Taylor, producing I Feel Love Coming On, a track that exploded in the UK market. This success led to his signing with Forward Records of Los Angeles in 1969. But perhaps his most significant move came 3 years later when he formed Love Unlimited, his own girl group that drew comparisons to Motown's The Supremes. This wasn't just about creating music, it was about building an empire, much like what Berry Gordy had done with Motown Records, which had launched the careers of legends like Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, Marvin Gaye, and Smokey Robinson. What set White apart wasn't just his voice or his production skills. It was his understanding that true success in the music industry meant being more than just a performer. While others were content to sing for their supper, Berry was cooking up a feast of his own making. By the early 70s, Berry White wasn't just following the music industry playbook. He was writing his own chapters. While Motown was breaking down racial barriers and bringing black music to mainstream America, White was orchestrating his own musical revolution, quite literally, with the creation of the Love Unlimited Orchestra in 1973. This was a 40-piece orchestra that started as a backing band for his girl group but quickly became something much bigger. When Love's theme hit the airwaves, it wasn't just another song. It was a groundbreaking instrumental that shot straight to #1 on the Billboard pop charts, proving that White's vision extended far beyond conventional R&B boundaries. The story of how Berry became a solo artist is almost comical. Here he was, preparing demos for some unnamed male singer, when Nunez heard them and basically said, "Man, these are your songs." White initially fought against the idea. Imagine that. The man with the iconic voice didn't want to sing, but after days of back and forth, he finally stepped behind the microphone and music history was made. His first solo hit, "I'm Gonna Love You Just a Little More Baby," dominated both the R&B and pop charts, staying in the top 40 for weeks. But White wasn't content just being a successful artist. He wanted more control over his destiny. In 1979, after 6 successful years with 20th Century, he made the bold move to launch Unlimited Gold under CBS Columbia Records. When asked about surviving in an industry where many black-owned companies were struggling with piracy and bootlegging, White's perspective was refreshingly candid. He faced the same challenges as everyone else. The nightmare of illegal taping and bootlegging wasn't discriminating based on race or company size, but White's approach to these challenges would prove to be as unique as his voice. The music industry has always been a roller coaster, and no one knew this better than Berry White. Despite having one of the most devoted fan bases in R&B history, even he wasn't immune to the shifting tides of popular music. When disco's glitter balls stopped spinning, White found himself facing a new reality. His pop chart dominance began to fade, though his core fans never wavered.
But you know that in 3 days you have to do this major thing. It doesn't really allow you to rest. Reinforcement, of the impression you're making musically on people.
Davis praised Luther's musical DNA and star potential, and indeed, Luther's debut album Never Too Much shot him to stardom. But as White had predicted, success came with strings attached. Soon, whispers about Luther began spreading through the industry, rumors that Luther consistently denied throughout his career, though friends would later confirm them after his passing. The pressure of maintaining his public image while dealing with personal struggles took its toll. Luther's health began a devastating decline, complicated by severe diabetes that would eventually lead to a stroke in 2003. His physical transformation was dramatic and public. Fans watched as their beloved singer battled weight fluctuations and health issues that increasingly affected his ability to perform. The mental toll was perhaps even more severe than the physical. Luther's struggles with self-image became a constant battle, despite encouragement from fellow artists like Whitney Houston, who reminded him that his fans loved him for his extraordinary talent, not his appearance. But in an industry obsessed with image, these personal battles were fought under the unforgiving spotlight of public scrutiny. White had seen it all before. The way the industry could slowly chip away at an artist's spirit, using their vulnerabilities against them. His warnings to Luther hadn't just been about professional pitfalls. They were about the human cost of fame under certain powerful figures in the industry. It was a price that, as events would prove, could be devastatingly high.
In your book, you reveal that you are bisexual. Why did you wait so long, Clive, to make that public?
I was only turning to bisexuality after my second marriage failed. When the marriage failed in the mid-'80s, I opened myself up to the possibility that I could have a relationship with a man, as well as the two that I had with a woman.
Sources close to the situation say Berry had uncovered connections between Davis and some seriously questionable business practices, particularly involving his relationship with Diddy and several other key industry players. We're talking about the kind of dealings that don't make it into official music industry histories, the type that would make even hardened industry veterans uncomfortable.
Bad Boy Entertainment. I named it Bad Boy because I wanted to go against the grain. Anytime you go against the grain, they consider you like kind of bad. Nothing negative, nothing like hardcore. Just, I didn't want to be regular.
The real issue wasn't just what Barry knew. It was that he wasn't the type to stay quiet about it. Unlike many artists who would look the other way for the sake of their careers, Barry had built his own empire and wasn't dependent on Davis's good graces. He had a reputation for speaking his mind and warning other artists about industry predators. For someone like Davis, who had spent decades building his power structure, Barry White represented a genuine threat. This wasn't just about protecting reputation, it was about protecting an entire system of power and control that Davis had carefully constructed over decades. Barry White, with his independent spirit and fearless approach to calling out industry wrongdoing, was a loose cannon that Davis couldn't control. And in Davis's world, uncontrollable elements had to be eliminated, one way or another. Or the irony? The more Davis tried to push Barry out, the more it confirmed what Barry had been saying all along about the corrupt nature of certain power players in the music industry. It was a classic case of the empire striking back against someone who dared to speak truth to power. So what do you think? Comment down below and let us know. If you like this video, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be the first to see my next video. I post updates like this every week where I uncover the secrets of your favorite celebrities.